City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded March 13, 2023.
Good evening. We're calling the Finance Committee to order. It is 6:50 on March 13th. And the first item is always the roll call.
Morrow.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Dalton. Here. Shore.
Here.
Plassance.
Here.
And that is everybody. Thank you very much. All right, item 2 is under our discussion and possible action. The item 2 is approval of funding in the 2025 capital budget for a new Pierce fire apparatus for the Stevens Point Fire Department. This is the funding for something that has been advanced. I'm sure the chief will be very happy. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Approval. Is there a second? We have a second. Is there any discussion or questions on this? Alder Shore.
Thank you, Chair. No, just to say this falls into a category we run across, and it's always worth remarking to express appreciation to the department heads, number one, for watching for these opportunities to save. In this case, by getting ahead of the rising prices, and since it does involve a pulling forward in terms of time, I have to assume that this maybe also affects other departments, or maybe this one doesn't since it's being added. We know how hard the department heads work on both of those, and appreciate it.
This is a good thing. It keeps us all safe. Anything else, Chief?
So a few things I'd like to just point out by moving this forward is with the requisition letter, you'll see in there that it's a capital improvement project for 2025. We're basically going to be signing the contract and not paying for that apparatus until it arrives. I did get in the requisition letter, you'll see that the costs were approximately $800,000 to $850,000. I was able to get that quote back this afternoon while we were here, and it's going to be $936,000 for the new fire apparatus. What I'd like to point out, though, is that we are going to be receiving truck 22 this next week, a truck, and we paid not more than 14 months ago $936,000 for that apparatus. That's how much the cost inflation has gone up, and we've listened to the taxpayers of the city of Stevens Point, and the reason we're purchasing the apparatus this way is we are going to be taking engine 1 and refurbing it into a squad. We are going to be purchasing our new engine, and we're merging 2 apparatuses into 1 apparatus. And so over the next 3.5 years, this project will save the city approximately $2.2 million by doing this ahead of time. And so I just want to point all of those things out. And just the simple purchase of this apparatus, if we were to wait an additional 2 years, we're looking at $1.25 million just for this apparatus. The price increases on emergency service apparatuses right now is crazy. We've seen a 1.75% standing increase at 7% a year. The pumps have gone up 9% each and every year, and the price increase for the new standards in emissions in 2026, 2027. Not the cost of the motor in the apparatus, just the emissions cost, depending on which motor we go with, is going to be between $55,000 and $95,000 just in emissions if we were to wait on this apparatus. So that's why we've talked to the comptroller's office, why I put this requisition letter in, and why we've changed the way we do business in the fire department.
I am so glad that you came forward to explain all of that and to proudly let everybody know the work that you're doing. I'm always very impressed with the way you think. Thank you. Questions for the chief? Other than thank you?
No problem.
Yeah. Questions from the audience regarding this particular topic? All right. We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the funding in the 2025 capital budget for the new Pierce fire apparatus. As the chief had explained, it will save us money in the end. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 3, approval of amendment to ordinance 4.05 paren 2, filing of list of claims to include the process for approving claims related to the enterprise's utilities, so the enterprise funds. And for those who are unfamiliar with enterprise funds are non-tax levy departments. They generate enough money within their departments, like sewer and water, to pay their bills, pay their employees, et cetera. So they're enterprises, and those include utilities, transit, and airport. Currently, as you saw in the memo, these are not listed when we do our claims paid. That's paid. We haven't had that approval process, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the amendment to the ordinance.
Is there a second?
I second.
There is a second. Are there any questions? Of course, there was a short memo from the comptroller explaining all of this. It's, again, process-driven, but it puts another set of eyes to ensure that everything is taken care of.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
Like, so if we see something that was billed out by the sewer, for the sewer department, which generates its own money, and we have an issue with that, what are we able to do? Because we don't even have control over their budget because they have their own.
I would let the expert, our comptroller treasurer, who is online. Corey, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. And basically the answer to that is the council does primarily delegate its authority to the Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners in terms of the day-to-day operations. However, the city council does have ultimate control and authority over the utilities. So in the event that there was a disagreement there, basically the city council could overrule the Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners.
That would get messy.
Yeah, and that isn't something that's typically happened, but it's just the city council does still have some oversight ability over, the water and sewer operations. Also, as you know, the city council will approve any rate increases that happen with water and sewer. So the city council does still have a role there if it wants one. But again, primarily how things have been happening is that the city council has really trusted the Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners to run those day-to-day issues.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from people in the audience? Hearing none. We have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Excuse me. Item 4, approval of establishing a financial assistance program for reopening permanently filled window openings. That's a weird statement. With a one-time allocation of $20,000 from TIF 6, that's downtown, to the aforementioned program. And there was a memo, Alder Shore.
I move approval.
Right, there is a motion and a second. Would you like to, any questions for our zoning administrator?
No, I think it's a great idea for a program.
Okay.
I thought it was really good. It's nice for the $20,000 to see who all wants to even try it. Because to unbrick some of those windows will be a pretty lengthy, costly process to do that and put window seals in and frames and everything else. But didn't even consider this an issue until Adam had his memo, and it was actually pretty well thought out.
I'd say there was about 2.5 dozen buildings that I've observed within this project area that has a multitude of windows that are filled. So it's a lot more than what you think, for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes it just takes someone with a fresh eye to look at those. I appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? Members of the audience? Alder Christensen?
Mark Christensen, Alder 1, District 1. This actually came out to, Adam and I had a chance to attend a seminar up in Rothschild on historic preservation. And we've had a number of discussions as far as some of the frustration. And the gentleman from the Main Street program, who's an architect and provides architectural services for people in the Main Street program, this is one of the things that was an item of concern for him, but for most facade grant programs, this wouldn't be significant enough to qualify. So I had a conversation with Adam and said, that's kind of frustrating because it's kind of a first step for people. A lot of times, for the public, if you're looking at the historic aspect of a building, the outside is your first thing that you notice, and the fact that the windows have been infilled, it really detracts to a large extent. And so I mentioned to Adam, I thought it'd really be nice if we could come up with something. Well, lo and behold, as Adam does, he did and did very well. I did have a chance when we attended a Main Street orientation program to talk to John, and he was what we had in mind. He said there is no other community that has it. He thinks it's an incredibly good idea and wants us, if it passes, he wants us to send it to them because he thinks that it's got a lot of potential. So I am very supportive.
Awesome. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Nice job. Thank you so much, Adam. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 5, approval of the acquisition of 3 unaddressed parcels off of Maria Drive. I will read the parcel IDs for the record. Parcel IDs 2812408-292-40033 is one of the parcels. The other is 2812408-292-40046. And then finally, 2812408-292-40047. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Discussion.
I think this is going to be really good to increase our housing stock and the diversity of the housing stock that we have. A big complaint is that we only do a multifamily of units, and now we're going to have an opportunity to kind of mix things up again to have more folks who will be able to afford houses inside of the city.
Absolutely. Any other comments from the committee? Members of the audience, any questions or comments on this particular item? I just want to make a comment that I think this purchase is nicely aligned also in honoring the sisters and what they wanted to see happen on that property. It was their property and they loved it, and they valued the idea of family, and that's what they want to see here. So I think it is a win-win. We have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 6, approval of the acquisition of the property located at 5498 Gala Road, parcel ID 02024086-13.05, in an unaddressed parcel bounded by Gala Road and Regent Street, parcel ID 02024086-14.03. I'd entertain a motion.
I motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I've got a question or two on it.
Yes, sir.
These parcels that are there, coming on in November, I'm trying to put everything together, and somewhere along the line, I thought that this Anderson, or whoever the developer is, had just purchased this property within the last year or so.
That is correct.
And how much did they pay for it?
$350,000.
Thank you. Off the top of my head, I didn't have that. Yes.
What is it?
$350,000.
And we're looking to pay $450,000.
That is.
Sorry, $375,000.
Okay. That is what was recommended.
Why are we paying anything more than what he paid for it a year ago? Why are we giving this guy retirement money?
I think that's a very good question, and a legitimate one. Absolutely.
Does anyone have an answer to it?
It was what we, and I'm speaking, I know Director Karnowski is gone, and I don't know if Adam can speak to this at all now. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
So frequently, developers or businesses or charitable organizations come to the city with a request. The request is always up here, and we always start down here with negotiations. So when we negotiate something to the best of our ability, that's what we bring forward to council. In this case, we had worked with Mr. Anderson to say, listen, we'll give you what you paid for it, even though it's my understanding we don't even have an appraisal of the property.
That's correct.
There's nothing to base this price on other than what he purchased it for and what he also claims to have invested in designs. You probably recall that the purchase of the property to the south of that was approved by the city to help make his original project work, along with another parcel to make the tract contiguous so it's easier for annexation. The city has done a lot with that proposed development over the course of the last year, and every single department head has worked on it. When discussing this with Mr. Anderson, Director Karnowski felt that this was the best price that we were going to get at the time, and therefore we are submitting it to council. I am not giving an endorsement on this, just so everybody's clear. We're bringing the proposal because it's your decision ultimately.
Can we propose a lower amount?
I would recommend that oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that if the council or this body chooses to provide guidance on the negotiation, that you do nothing on this proposal, and then outside of the meeting, direct staff to put a closed session item on for next week to get that guidance. Because it's a negotiation, we want to make sure that that's done in closed session so we don't show all of our cards to the person we're trying to negotiate with. Does that make sense?
That does. Now, this came about, he purchased the land, we purchased the land. I'm sure we had loan approval for his land purchase. Did we have any approval from him as far as that he was going to go through with this project?
Not really, no.
Do we require that?
Well, there were two different rounds of, so when he first came in, the plan had the big wide lots and bigger lots, bigger homes, and because we had concern that that wasn't really what we wanted, came back in and then was smaller lots, and that was the second plan. And then that kind of didn't pan out, and now it's just done, so.
If I may.
Yes, you may.
We worked in good faith with the developer to make this project go. It wasn't until very recently he approached the city to say, listen, I'm not as confident anymore. Does the city want to buy it? And it started out actually much higher than this.
Yep. Your questions are well-founded. Go. Alder Shore, please.
Thank you, Chair. From my experience with these situations, when the negotiation does reach this point, there has been a lot of back and forthing and pushing from the city's side to get the best deal that it can. And I'm aware of at least one a situation in a prominent spot where we went multiple rounds and with input from the council, and they were asking too much when we walked away. Same has happened with some incentive situations. Typically, what's coming to us here is a lot has already gone into it. So personally, I'm inclined to sort of take that good faith effort has been made. Thanks.
Other comments?
But the
I know in
good
the
faith
past
effort
we-
wasn't even there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The good faith effort wasn't even there on his part to follow through with what we were looking at originally.
That could be. I'm not going to say what's in his mind.
Sure.
That would be
He owns it
inappropriate.
now. Possession is 9/10.
Right. But I don't know what his thought process is, and I certainly wouldn't try to say what that was.
I know as you also stated, like the first thought was that they're going to do large lots and smaller lots, and we're going to try to make it into like a whitetail subdivision type of thing.
Right.
And there was concerns about if someone else would get it because of our wellheads as well.
Wellhead protection, yes.
And that was one of the other concerns why the city thought about buying this land so that we could develop it on our own and try to make sure that the wellheads are safe, and we would have another chance for some different types of housing stock. Because I know within the city there's nowhere else to really build a single family home on a plot of land unless you like go into the city and tear something down. I do have some concerns about this, but it might be wiser to take a longer look at it.
Fair enough. Alder Dalton, anything?
Yeah, I remember one of the greatest concerns that was brought up was the utility and water protection. So from that perspective, both for the residents that are all in that servicing area outside of this parcel, this was a strategic purpose. And water is hard to quantify in dollar signs when you want quality drinking water.
There's that.
It's impossible because it's worth every penny.
Yes.
And once your wellhead goes bad, you really can't fix it.
I'll reserve my comments until either other alders or members of the audience comment. Yes, sir. You're back up. We're going to get your name emblazoned on the front.
Do you know if Mr. Anderson ever completed an appraisal as part of his purchase process?
We haven't been made aware of that.
Good question
Yeah.
for him, perhaps.
Yes.
And if not, I mean, first of all, I don't think it's prudent to buy anything without some valuation, whether it be a single-family home or a large parcel of land. Is he going to share his usage draft? I mean, they talk about single-family or 1 to 2 families. He put something together to that effect, and will he share that with the city, which probably has value?
We have that,
And that-
yes.
We talked about it in a public meeting, sorry.
We've
That probably has
already
value.
reviewed that, yeah.
So the only thing I'm asking, is there enough time to get an appraisal? If he does not have an appraisal, if he does, that should be a pretty good indicator as to where you are, plus maybe a little premium for his work or services to draft.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Other members of the audience, other alders? I want to give everybody a chance. All right, I will just say a couple of items. I too haven't seen an appraisal. If I'm buying anything, I want to know what it's worth. I realize that this was strategic as far as sort of wellhead protection. The developmental potential there, I think it's there. It's still wet. I think we would need to know what kind of, from an engineering perspective, I think I would like to know, and maybe that's my quasi-engineering brain, how much fill has to come in to make those homes viable so they're not sitting in groundwater. So I think there's still some things. I think it has potential. I agree with you, Alder Marl, but I think we just kind of wait. That's my opinion.
Would a motion to postpone until April? Because I also feel
Sure.
the director's absence is perhaps lacking some of the
I think that's fair enough.
the answers that we have, which I think we have had discussions about it.
Yeah,
Closed
well,
session.
it's fair enough. We do have a motion on the floor, though, to, what was the motion?
To approve.
To approve.
Right.
So we need to take action on that motion, or I believe whoever made the motion can rescind.
I could rescind that.
I was the second, I think, and I would support replacing with this.
All right. Is there a second motion as it relates to this agenda item?
I'll move to postpone until April.
We have a motion to postpone. And second, yes, sir?
With the motion to postpone, if there's any information that this body or the council would like, it would be helpful to have that now, those requests now, so we have a month to get that information together for this body.
What would Finance Committee like to see, especially from a mortgage guy?
A fair market value of the property.
A mortgage guy. Tell us what you would like to see.
Yeah, a fair market value of the property.
Fair market value. Anything else that we would like to see maybe staff pull together for us?
You don't have to decide tonight either.
Sure.
If you'll
But I think that
let
gives
staff know, but
gives
no.
staff an idea. All right. We have a motion to postpone until April. We will bring this back and hopefully have that information, as Alder Plaisance has indicated. In a second, any other discussion? Ken? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion and good thoughts. I appreciate that. Item 7, approval of the acquisition of 5 unaddressed parcels located off of Burlesky Road and Old Highway 18. Doing a lot of reading of parcel numbers here. Parcel number 281-240-8363, 20102. Also 020240-836-11.01, also 0202308001-06.01, also 020240-836-12, and then finally 020230-801-05.01. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we now are bringing it to the floor. I know that's why many of you folks are here. We'll give you a chance. Typically, we try to keep people to 3 minutes. If someone else has indicated exactly what you're going to say, you're at liberty to come up and say what you were going to say originally, but you can also say, you know what, my neighbor Sue said, I agree with her 100%, and it will still be considered into the record. So I want to make sure everybody's given a fair chance, but we also want to be timely so we can make sure everyone has their opportunity to speak. But first, we will start with the committee. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight one issue, which is the separation between the possible use, and we're all aware of the potential relocation of the garage and the fire department. The separation between that decision and the decision to purchase at all the property. And the reason I say that is that so the city has one set of issues in terms of coverage for the fire department, future of the fire department, where it's going to be located, future of the garage facility. But the city also has an interest just in many places around the city, not all, but certain spots where we have an interest in control. I think that it's important to be aware that even if we didn't proceed with relocating those facilities to that place, the city could, still have an interest in wanting to control that area in terms of how it is used. I mean, I can think of a former parking lot fronting on North Division that I wish we had owned to control how it was used, but we didn't. We didn't have that opportunity. So I just think that's really important to keep those two decisions separate. I mean, we do as a formal matter for decision making. I just wanted to kind of clarify why that's important. Thanks.
Thank you. Other members of the committee? Yes.
I've got a few things. So in purchasing this, it's like 1.7 million between the whole bundle together. It's our third item regarding real estate purchases that we've had tonight. It kind of makes me wonder what the city's getting into. I did some questions asking our treasurer, and that 1.7 will turn into 2.196 after total expenses and everything are factored in. It's my understanding that we have to get a loan in order to get this money.
Bond, yeah.
What's that?
Bond.
Bond, okay, yeah. All right. How does this factor into our budget?
That would be a question for the comptroller treasurer.
Sure. So what I would say is that I wouldn't expect any adjustment to the capital budget. In general, with our capital budget, we do try to match the amount of money that we're borrowing with the amount that we're repaying every year in principal. So when something like this comes up, it will increase our debt a little bit, but because we're already starting from a pretty good place, it shouldn't be a significant increase in the big scheme of things. And it's something that I think we can manage, this one-off expense without it impacting capital. And then, of course, it wouldn't have any impact on our operating budget because, as we know, we really have two different budgets, our operating budget and our capital budget. Our capital budget is for those one-off expenses, so we wouldn't expect any impact on the operating budget from this.
For now.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
I'm still learning government.
Yeah, no. A couple of years ago, I want to say it was maybe 2016, 17, we developed what we're calling a balanced capital budget, for lack of a better term, and so that we're always paying down debt. We're borrowing, obviously, because we've got projects every year, but the idea is to keep it sort of a buoyancy between what we're borrowing and what we're paying off. So it's more sustainable rather than these big leaps and then not paying enough debt service. And this finance committee approved that and was recommended by our comptroller treasurer, and it has kept an even keel for us. And that even keel makes sure that all of these folks, all of us, our taxes are maintained at again, that nice buoyant level rather than these big spikes. Does that make sense?
It does. It poses a question, though, is that if we do go about this purchase, are we down the road going to have to have a referendum, have a transportation tax or anything else come up just to support this?
If the addition of any roads or infrastructure is in excess of $1 million and it's within, of course, where we're sitting right now, from the referendum from last August, we may have to consider going to referendum. So,
I mean, as far as referendum, as far as
he's talking about bonding.
The purchase of...
Yeah, no, we wouldn't have to do that.
Okay. Okay.
I thought you meant like if we had to add in roads or other things.
No.
My mistake.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yep. I want to make sure. Yep. No.
Until we decide what we're going to do with it.
Alder Shore.
Thank you. Speaking to that issue of infrastructure associated with some of these parcels, this council considers it extremely important that we not work our way into future problems where we look at the new developments and any associated, particularly street, sewer, gutter, that the development has to basically pay for it. A community can get itself into a lot of trouble in terms of, okay, do the development, bear that initial cost of a street, say, but then we're going to be responsible 30, 40 years from now for reconstructing it. So when we look at these, that is in our calculation, and we don't tend to support things unless they not only pay for the initial construction, but for the future reconstruction with the associated property taxes.
If this was a development, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be your opportunity. I don't know who wishes to go first. Please step up to the lectern. I would ask that you just state your name. You don't necessarily have to say your address if you don't wish to. Some people are a little private about that. I want to make sure you all feel comfortable. Mr. Bushman, please step forward to the Bushman lectern.
I think I understood David's comments about infrastructure cost, things of that sort. I assume that you're right. They would be passed on to whomever is going to develop, whether they do that as a total development or possibly even on an individual lot sale. I'm guessing that's how that works.
Yes.
So yeah, it was one of my questions, and I think you've kind of touched on the financing, not only for this particular purchase consideration, but as well as the other two that came up in the meeting. So one of my items that I wanted to talk about tonight is, I'm just going to label it as urgency. The city has had a couple of years, maybe more recently on this particular parcel, I don't know, 60, 90 days. I'm not exactly sure when this discussion started in terms of this purchase. But there just seems to be a sense of urgency that to me is unwarranted without getting more information, making more decisions as to, and I don't agree, Mr. Shore, I think that usage does have to kind of go hand in hand with this purchase agreement. I am all in favor of purchasing this land, but with restrictions as to usage. And I'm referring to residential, strictly residential. That's what as mentioned in the notes that are attached to this meeting, and we're on the Planning Committee, 2005 Planning Commission. This was all designated as residential. I think it needs to stay that way. I have to believe that there are other locations that make a better fit if there's going to be other usage that is not residential. I don't know what the hesitation is from the city or the council or these committees to not talk about usage. I just don't understand that. To me, they go hand in hand. I'm not going to accuse anybody of hiding anything. I think, Mike, you addressed in a response to me. Thank you very much for that. But I just think there has to be more of a commitment if I were in your shoes to support a decision to purchase this. And again, I'm going to go back and keep harping. It has to be residential. That's what blends best in that particular area. I don't think it's the only location that we own. I don't know about the possibility of placing either one of those fire station and or city garage. I understand the fire station, very important. We do need something on the east side, absolutely. You know, we just went through that reconstruction on Highway 10, God forbid we had some kind of a fire out on the east side. City garage, different discussion. The only benefit for me is the compost site being closer, but that's fine. I don't mind driving down there and talking to the gentleman. He's a very nice person.
He is.
But I just have to emphasize again, I would like to see this decision postponed so there can be more openness as to the usage of this property. As I tried to explain, Mike, in my comments to you in an email, which may or not have been seen by others on this committee, there's a lot more cons than there are pros, in my opinion, and the biggest one to me is loss of tax revenue. We're going to get nothing if you decide to put a city-used usage on that land, whereas if we do single-family, maybe some duplexes to the back by the tracks, you're going to generate a lot of tax revenue. And I think it's going to open up, as you go further east, more opportunity for residential development. I wouldn't want that next door to me. I'm a little more removed, I think, than a lot of the people that are here from Hunter Oaks. I might be speaking for them. I don't want to, but I think that's a great concern to have that in that particular location. And again, I'm going to refer to the usage that appears to be, I don't know why you're putting that as part of the packet, quite frankly. I mean, it's almost like you're forcing people on the committees and or the council to lean in that direction. That's just my opinion. To me, it shouldn't have been there. If you were going to put that in there, you should have put residential development possibilities as part of that package. So enough said. You know where I stand. I think most of the people out here would agree that that's where they stand, and maybe with the same concerns. There's other things to think about. Let me know when my 3 minutes are up, please.
I was going to say, time is ticking. So.
Okay. You've got one way in and one way out of that particular subdivision. That's a whole other issue to be talking about perhaps someday on a city level, street level. So anyway, you know my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Bushman.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Certainly. If you would, sir.
I wasn't going to.
But here you are.
Dean Steinmetz. I live over in Hunter Oaks. And when I look around the room and I see my neighbors, how many of you, is this your first meeting tonight, right?
Welcome.
We found out about this on the 10th. And we had, maybe 15 people in our living room yesterday on short notice. And I'm sure we could have filled the basement and the backyard. When you look at how you get in and out of Hunter Oaks, when you look at that intersection and the number of accidents we have there already, and those of us who make the run to yard waste frequently know how that traffic gets backed up there, the sounds, and then you think about a fire station. Granted, I understand we're not talking about use, but the idea, you mentioned a parking lot on Division that you wish you owned. That's maybe a little bit of a different scenario than 83 acres in my backyard. And I think that's what we're taking kind of personally here, is the idea that if this is something that's going to take my property value, which I'm still making up for the flood of a couple of years ago, and the money it took to restore our house after that, and if I have to go in the hole even further, it's going to be a real setback. And I look at my friend Jerry, who lives right across the street. He's on the corner. He's the closest house, and how that would impact him and how I'd feel about my property if I was him. I think we're all taking it really personally, and the idea that anybody spends $1.8 million without a plan. My backyard a couple years ago was a result of no plan. And granted, act of God, whatever. But I would just ask the council to postpone this until there is a plan. And I really appreciate Alder Plaisance, your attention to this, and the fact that you were willing to speak with us yesterday. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sherry Holland, and I'm a homeowner in the Hunter Oaks subdivision, and I reside at 5633 Jefferson Street. I guess I'd like to express my opinion and concern with the proposal of purchasing the land. I'm not opposed to it whatsoever, but I too believe that prior to purchasing these parcels with such a large amount of money, there has to be more than the plans that were put out. Taxpayers and residents in the near Conifer and Hunter Oaks are definitely affected. I wish that had been put out earlier, that we could have just digested it. I totally understand that the city wants to buy it. It's great to purchase it because it's an investment in our community, if it's residential. Many of us are here and many are not, and I know that. I would encourage the committee to postpone this and really think about it. It would have been nice to, like I said, have had this information ahead of time and to see maybe other proposals or other sites that could have been looked at. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As it was said earlier, a good decision is better than a quick one. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming forward at your very first meeting. Anyone else? Okay. So as chair, I always like to reserve until last. I want everyone to speak, and typically I wouldn't, but this, so there's a couple of things. I understand the need, I'm totally in support of trying to find a place for Station 4 for fire service. The East Side deserves to have quick response, whether it's fire service or EMS. That makes absolute sense. In July of 2021, Barrientos, which is a design and consulting company, presented to the council, actually to the Board of Public Works, excuse me, it was at a Board of Public Works meeting, the results of its study on the new location for the Public Works campus, let's call it, just because that's kind of what it is. They had been retained some months earlier, and they're a consulting firm out of Milwaukee. And what they did is they looked at the entire kind of circumference of the city and looked at where are all the potential locations for a public works garage / campus. And I'm calling it a campus because it could be more than just, trucks. And at that time, Mr. Barrientos did a fabulous job of saying we have this many trucks, we need this much building, we need this much space, and this is his area of expertise. Then he identified, I think there were 7 or 8 locations, and I'd have to go back through. And if anybody wants that study, I'm happy to share it out. The city, the Public Works Department has it. This location was actually identified as one of those locations for a Public Works campus. However, it was ranked 5th. 5th. Not first, not second, not third, not fourth. 5th. For a variety of reasons. For traffic safety was one of them. Proximity to downtown, we need to have, for instance, a skid steer that is going to be used to clean the sidewalks downtown will either have to put along at 8 miles an hour to get downtown to clear the sidewalks, or staff is going to have to load it up on a flatbed trailer and take it downtown. So there were a number of reasons why this was 5th. It is not well suited for a number of reasons. We have some other options. So I don't like commissioning studies and then completely dismissing them. To me, that's a waste of time, and I've seen it happen throughout not only my professional career, but also my elected career. The comprehensive plan of 2005, that's the one you were referring to, has a land use map, and that land use map has this identified as residential. Now, my degree is in planning. When you have a land use plan, you do it for a reason, so that the future is well informed on what's going to go there. I find it difficult and objectionable when we sort of change land use plans for reason. I just don't. Land use plans are important. The other is our zoning code, our zoning plan. That area in our zoning plan is also zoned residential. This would be a manufacturing or a heavy industrial thing plopped in the middle of a residential. Now, the fire station obviously is a much smaller, footprint. We've got one downtown and it's 1 square block. That's different. My professional life, I've built and operate landfills, and I'm used to big equipment, and guess what? They're noisy. Backup beepers are very annoying, and it was the one thing we heard from our landfill neighbors, other than odors, was backup beepers. Allison might know other things, but backup beepers is one thing. So for those reasons, I'm having a hard time finding rationale to support this, other than if if there is a clear separation between the purchase, I don't have a problem purchasing it and looking at residential, but separating it from any potential public works garage. And if we can't do that, I can't support this. So. I had the last word. That's unusual in my household anyway. Oh, no, I don't. Sorry. Go ahead.
And no, that was great, because I just wanted to talk about why this is before us. Just like the rest of the agenda,
right.
Our job at the city is to look at opportunities and then bring them to the council for discussion and decision. The reason that it seems urgent is because this property is just coming on the market. That's our best chance at acquiring it. Right now, it's not even in the city limits. If the city chooses not to purchase that, we will have absolutely zero control over what goes there. Nothing. So it was our obligation as city staff to bring it forward. The asking price is what the asking price is, and if the council and the body choose not to buy it, that's fine. But if they choose to buy it, we have our land use plan, but no specific plan is in place for this property. The same thing was true for several of the other properties that we have purchased, not just tonight, but previously. We have the Edgewater downtown. Okay, there's no plan for it. We're going to be asking for proposals. The proposals will then come to this body and the council to determine if that's something that's in our best interest. So that's the reason that it's being brought forward tonight and last week at the Plan Commission, to make sure that if the council chooses to do something with it, they have the opportunity before someone snatches it out from under us. We have a very large house in the middle of Buchel Park right now because we acted a little bit slower. And we'll never get that property back now. It's going to be there's a monstrous house in the middle of Buchel Park, and it will likely be there through our lifetime. So I just want to be clear that that's why we did it, and I sent emails to several of you explaining that, and I just want it to be clear for everybody else.
Yes, any other questions?
Oh, I'm going to let Mr. Bushman one more time, and then I'll come back to you. Oh, and Alder Christensen. Herding cats. Wait till you get, your voice is pretty quiet anyway, so would you, if you
I am back to my comment. I am 100% in favor of purchasing this parcel. Absolutely, we need to control usage. But why can't we as a committee recommend purchase subject to remaining existing zoning and or usage? That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
That's simple.
I agree. Alder Christensen, it is now your turn, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
I guess I kind of echo those comments and a lot of the concerns as well. Part of the reason why you can't connect the two is it's a finance committee. It's not a planning committee, and so the planning commission is the one that makes the recommendations on those kind of decisions as far as use, and then the council as a whole. That's really not the purview of this committee. This committee has to make the decision of whether or not to approve the finances necessary to acquire that property. Myself personally, I actually agree with the majority of these people. I do think it's in the city's best interest to purchase the property, to be able to control what happens there. I am supportive of a fire station out there. I think that benefits the residents. I think it's important. And there's only a very finite number of directions that the city can grow. And there are people that want to locate here, and there aren't vacant spaces to do that. So it's in the city's best interest to be able to accommodate those things. I'm in favor of the fire station. I'm not convinced that it's necessarily the best place for a public works garage. And so, but again, those are future decisions that will have to be made by other committees and other entities. Right now, what this committee has to decide is whether or not to approve the actual purchase of the property. And I guess I have confidence in my colleagues that they'll be making wise decisions down the line. So.
We can always make recommendations, and people can ignore us if they wish. No, please, sir.
If the city does not purchase this property and someone else does, they could put a factory up there or whatever they wanted? Or is it restricted?
It's not in the city.
That would not be a permitted use.
It's not in the city.
It's not in the city now, but I'm assuming town of Hull would, is it in Hull? Yeah, you're Hull. I didn't think you were Stockton yet.
Because of being next, or even like a semi-stopping in a warehousing area.
Right.
Because it's right by the tracks.
I think we've got extraterritorial, don't we?
I was just going to say, yeah, it's in the town of Hull, so any rezoning done through the township would need city approval for the extraterritorial review.
Yeah.
So if they would want to rezone it to allow for a factory, for example, it would be the city's obligation to deny it because of our extraterritorial review.
We could deny Hulls.
That is correct.
Okay. Correct.
Through extraterritorial zoning. Yep. And which is can be contentious, as you can well imagine.
I would think so.
I'm going to go to Alder Dalton.
They're
then.
the first, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to echo Alder Christensen's comments that this is a financial decision and that control is largely a financial benefit. And I think Chief Moody has made a very persuasive argument as to the benefit of if we did decide to move a station out there, that the response times alone, but then also the kind of tertiary benefits to businesses, because then the fire department's goal of hitting the next level of fire services allows for larger scale businesses and businesses to reduce their insurance costs. And like that's an attractive feature for economic development in the community for the business park that's right across the way. So those are the things that in all the pieces of the puzzle that it is, and that there is city, this isn't the only time the city's played developer and including in a residential area. So they think I'm supportive of it for that reason.
Alder Shore.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so also to sort of pick up on what Alder Christensen was saying, it's pretty clear that the weight of opinion in the council is in agreement, with you, and that what we're talking about is what's the decision that we're able to make now. And I understand why it'd be reassuring if we could make a decision that said not just that we're going to purchase, but that we're going to purchase for that development purpose rather than the relocation of the public works. But I think as Alder Christensen said, just in terms of what points along the way decisions are made, that decision is going to come in the future. To reinforce the idea that sentiment up here is similar to sentiment in the neighborhood, when Mr. Bushman mentions increasing the property tax base, he's speaking my language. I think he's speaking our language. It's one of my top priorities, always. I'd add that, in terms of residential development, the argument against, heavy or even light industry is clear. We talk a lot about mixed use, so we do like to see a little bit of retail, so that maybe you could walk to some, local retail and aren't having to drive to everything. So just to make that point. But I think that just kind of, in terms of timing and when things are ripe for decision, it's the just purchase decision that's in front of us rather than the land use decision.
Anyone else? Mary?
I would like to speak.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
Since I live on the east side and I do know something about urban planning, being a retired urban planner myself, I think the city needs to purchase this property because we can control the outcome. And I think once we purchase the property, it will be incumbent upon this body to decide what is the highest and best use for the property, including ramifications to the tax base if we put a governmental entity on that property, to say nothing of the effects on the tax base for the Hunter Oaks subdivision or the property value. So I think the use, we can figure that out. I think we've got a really great opportunity. We could come up with some innovative housing developments. We could do any kind of creative, state-of-the-art kind of development out there. But if we don't own it, we can't control it. And if we control it, we can work with the neighbors, the residents that live out there, and we can do something together. This doesn't have to be us against them. I think we could make this a really big plus for the city and for the neighborhood if we do it right and we do it carefully and we consider the highest and best use. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for ignoring you. I got a room full. I want to make sure I'm taking care of everybody. So I may get the last word yet. I think some of the hesitancy from these fine folks, even a bit of my reticence, is that, as you had said, you found out just the other day, we need to do a better job communicating. Communication's hard. It's one of my shortcomings. I will admit it. I always think people know what's in my head, and then I realize that you don't. So I think that's the hesitancy, that this came quickly, as Mr. Bushman had indicated, and we haven't communicated well enough to those people who are impacted. They are right, this is a finance decision, but what was important is this discussion to make it very clear to everybody else that, as Alder Kneebone said, how this will be used needs to come back. If the council approves this, this comes back and as soon as possible to dedicate what that land use is. And I would say it needs to be consistent with our zoning and our land use plan. Anything else? Great discussion. We do have a motion on the floor, robust discussion, and a second. Put it to the committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstentions? Motion carries.
So we had 2 noes.
3-2.
3-2. Motion carried. This body is advisory to council. We meet next Monday at 7 o'clock right here. So all of the actions of the Finance Committee and all the other committees that you've been listening to tonight, those come back as advisory to the council, and the council approves those actions or rejects them depending upon what they want. So you're certainly welcome to come back and once again have this conversation, or as I believe one of your neighbors is on Zoom. So thanks for your participation. All right, we have, where's my agenda?
He's the head of the county board.
All right, items, where are we? Item 8, approval of claims paid, something we had talked about recently.
I move approval of the claims already paid.
Already paid, that's a weird thing.
I second that.
All right, any questions for the comptroller treasurer about the claims that have already been paid? Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. We are at the end of our agenda. It is 7:54, and at the discretion of the chair, we are adjourned.
Video recordings of these meetings are available on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.